right. So in Isaiah chapter 26 from verses 3 to 4, it says, you will keep him in perfect peace. Tell somebody, keep him in perfect peace. Whose mind is stayed on you because it trusts in. Tell somebody, lack of peace in your life can be a disconnection from God. Lack of peace in your life could be that your mind is traveling, your mind is wandering. Tell somebody, don't let your mind wander. Keep your mind on Jesus. As long as Peter looked to Jesus, he did not sink. But the moment he looked to his circumstances and everything that was going on around him, it sank. If you're looking at the media and the things that are going on in our nation, you're going to sink in your faith. Tell somebody, keep your eyes on Jesus, the source of our peace. In Psalms 119, verses 165, it says, abundant peace belongs to those who love your instruction. Nothing can make them stumble. That's a precious promise. God says that if you keep yourself, or if you stay on him, then abundant peace belongs to you. If you love his word, if you love his instruction. In Psalms 36 verses 8, he says, they shall be abundantly satisfied with fatness of thy house. Thou shalt make them drink of the river of thy pleasure. Those are all benefits of the presence of God. Anytime you hear somebody saying, I'm empty, I have no peace, tell them to dip their head on the stream of living water and peace will come in like a flood. Anytime you hear somebody says, oh, I don't have peace, I feel like I'm torn. No, they are not in the presence of God. Direct them as a deer that is panting for the water. Tell them to run into the river. In Psalm 16 from verses 10 to 11, for you will not abandon me in Sheol, of the netherworld, of the place of the dead, nor will you allow your Holy One to undergo decay. You will show me the path of life. In your presence there's fullness of what? Tell somebody, in your presence there's fullness of joy. In your presence there's fullness of life. In your presence there's fullness of delight. In your right hand there's pleasures forevermore. Now here's the question. If the presence of God is full of life, is full of joy, is full of our delight, is full of pleasures forevermore, why do we get away from it? What prompts us and pushes us to a point where we disconnect ourselves from the presence of God? David cries and he says, my soul longeth after thee. What is a soul that is longing after God? He says, my whole entire being longs for you. My mind, my will, my emotion, even my flesh craves to be in your presence. David says, I'd rather be a doorkeeper in your house than spend my days in the tents of the wicked. David is prioritizing the presence of God. Tell somebody, you need the presence of God. Moses said, if your presence doesn't go with us, we do not want to leave this place. Lord, if I have found favor in your sight, show me your glory. How can you find favor with God and still ask him to show you his glory? I thought that when you found favor with the Lord, you should be satisfied. Moses was not satisfied with God showing him favor and grace. He says, show me your glory. That is the paradox of love. That having known him and found him, you still want him. Tell somebody, having known him and found him, you still want him. That's the paradox of love. But you can't get to that place unless you're longing for the presence of God. And as Moses was ministering before the presence of God, the glory of God surrounding that tent, when Moses left the tent, Joshua went in there. Joshua walked into the tent when Moses left. Do you know what Joshua was saying? Joshua was saying, I'm not just satisfied being out here. Whatever is going on in there must be so precious that if Moses doesn't want to linger into this presence, I want to go. Right when Moses walked out of the tent, Joshua jumps in there and he spends time in the afterglow of that presence. No wonder God chose him to finish the job. Because he valued the presence of God. Tell somebody, value the presence. Prioritize the presence over the process. You didn't get it. Let me repeat it. Prioritize the presence over the process. If they followed the presence of God and did exactly what they were told to do, they got to the promised land within 11 months. But because they did not prioritize the presence, 40 years around the mountain. How many of you want to go 40 years and the same problems you're facing right now? Joseph in a pit, left to die, trusted himself to the God who gave him the promises. When a baby is born, the water breaks, then contractions come. Then the baby comes out. The water is the word spoken to you. Okay? But every time God speaks a word to you, contractions begin, which means the affliction and persecution from the word that has been spoken to you. Tell somebody, when God speaks to you, Satan comes and attacks the word. So you start feeling the contractions. And if you pay attention to the contractions and you do not learn to breathe well, women who have given birth, they understand you got to breathe well and you got to pace those breaths. All right. The word spoken to you has the presence backing it. You lose the word, you lose the presence, and your baby chokes to death. Or things wrap themselves around that baby's neck because you're not treating the contraction period well. You're not pushing well. Finally, the baby comes out and there is joy and there's rejoicing. But realize this, before that baby is called alive, the baby has to cry. That cry means that breath has come into the lungs of the baby. Realize that there is breath and blood. There's blood as the baby's coming out. There's breath when the baby comes out. All right? On the cross of Calvary, when Jesus is giving birth to the church, what comes out from his side? Water and blood. Tell somebody, there's always instances where water and blood go together, where spirit and the word work together. When God gives you something and you're on the season of birthing, whatever God has spoken to you is going to be tried. It's going to be tested. Your security, your canopy of hiding is the presence of God. Tell somebody, keep the presence. Let me repeat it. Keep the presence and lose the friends. Oh yeah, that goes even for family people. Keep the presence and lose family people who will not line up to that presence. When Mary and Joseph got accustomed to Jesus and they called and they went, oh, your mom and dad is out there looking for you. Jesus pulled out a dagger from his mouth and he said, that's not my mother, that's not my father, and those are not my brothers. My brothers are those who obey the word of God. He pulled up a sword and he cut off that soul tie. And he said, I'm here about my father's purposes. From that moment, he doesn't call Mary mother. He says, woman, woman, woman. What was Jesus doing? Disconnecting familiarity to keep the presence and the mandate. Tell somebody, you got to cut off familiarity. People can get used to you that they block you from walking your call. People can love you that they can stop you from going to the cross and dying. Peter did the same thing. Jesus, you cannot go to that cross. I'm going to stop you. And Jesus said, get thee behind me, Satan. You've gotten used to me too much. You don't understand why I'm here. Tell somebody there's a reason why we're here. And that reason is clothed in the presence of God. Tell somebody the presence of God. Jesus could not do anything unless the Father spoke it. Jesus could not do anything unless the presence was there for him to act. He didn't heal the sick until that presence came. Oh, don't take your Holy Spirit from me. Tell somebody, take not your spirit from me. Take not your presence from me. You can take all things, but give me Jesus. Tell somebody, keep the presence. If the presence is this important, why do we walk away from it? Psalms chapter 17 verses 15 says, as for me, I will behold your face in righteousness. When I awake, I will be satisfied in your. All right, let's keep on going. So you can remove yourself from God's presence by the thought you entertain. Tell somebody, even the thought we entertain can remove us from the presence of God. It gets personal now. Many of us, we have a lot of thoughts going through our mind during the week. Your thoughts can quickly change the scenario of your spirit. Your thought could quickly remove that hedge of protection. That helmet of salvation can be punctured by thought you entertain. Tell somebody, you can allow Satan to puncture your helmet of salvation by the thought you entertain. Quickly, the evil thought can take away the presence of God through the thought you entertain and the appetites that you satisfy in rebellion to God. Adam and Eve, in the presence of God, they loved the pleasures of, listen, they were in the garden. Anything they wanted to eat, it just came to them. No work for it. You didn't have to dig the ground. The garden was self-cultivated. The angels did that work. They were children. So whatever they wanted, it just came to them. No work. But quickly, by entertaining deceitful thoughts, they removed themselves from the privileges. Tell somebody, you can lose your power to dominate or to rule with Christ on earth. You can lose your influence if the presence of God goes away. That's why I'm saying you got to protect the presence of God. It's important. Cain had a choice to keep the presence and become a seed of God. He chose to disobey, and he became a seed of the serpent, not because God wanted him, by his own choice. Tell somebody, we are subjects of our own choices. Great men of God are great men of God because they make better choices. Great women of God are great women of God because they make better choices every day. There is no shortcut. Tell somebody there's no shortcut. If you want God to use you, do the same things Jesus did, and you'll find that the results just follow. But you cannot say, we want revival, but we don't want to pray like Jesus prayed. We don't want to preach like Jesus preached. We don't want to live the life he lived, but we want the results he got. It's not going to work. Tell somebody, pay the price. You want God to use you more in your generation? Go above and beyond. Tell somebody, above and beyond. Keep the presence. In Psalms 139 from verses 7 to 12 says, where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to the heaven, you're there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, you're there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the outermost part of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely darkness shall fall on me, even the night shall be light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as day. The very God who dwells in an approachable light is also surrounded with darkness. Let me give you an example. In the holies of holies in the tabernacle, there was no window, there was no door, there was no artificial lights. That means only the light of God was allowed to illuminate. Yet God dwelt in that darkness. Scientists are now finding out that even the black hole, the core of it, there's light. How can you have something so dark, but in the middle of it, there's bright light? God dwells in the holies of holies where there's no artificial lights, but he is the light in that darkness. He says, let's go back. Surely the darkness shall not fall on me. Even the night shall be light about me. It shall not hide from you, but the night shines a day. In heaven there's no sun. Why? Because Jesus is the illumination of heaven. Everything in heaven illuminates, including flowers. They emit light. Even your mansions in heaven that Jesus went to build, they emit light. Everything emits its light. Everything is a reflection of him. Everything is gloriously reflecting who he is. And that's the same thing. When we carry his presence on this earth, we are reflectors of his glory. Tell somebody, I want to be a reflector of God's glory. There are biblical accounts of people who tried to hide from God. Adam and Eve in Genesis after they disobeyed God, or Jonah who tried to run away from God's plan. They're all running away from the presence. Realize that they're all running away from a very good thing. They make a choice to remove themselves from something precious.